Grade 1 racing gets underway in 2020. Let's take a look at the Pegasus Stakes from Gulfstream Park. This year, a purse of $3 million. And the big question mark for handicappers is how will all of the horses do without Lasix as they run Lasix free in the 2020 edition. Of course, this race has been run 3 times. We've had 3 favorites win this race in Arrogate, Gunrunner, and City of Light. Gunrunner and City of Light just dominated the last couple of years, and Arrogate beat a tough older horse in California Chrome in the inaugural race of the Pegasus Stakes. So it should be a good race. Omaha Beach, the most likely favorite. He is just one of 12 horses entered here. Remember, we'll lead you all the way through Grade 1 races in 2020 and the Kentucky Derby. Hit subscribe, and let's start with this field at the rail. It's True Timber, Grade 1 placed in the Cigar Mile in 2018, and he is going to try to stretch out that speed to 1 1/8 miles. Can he get the 9 furlongs? That's the big question mark if you're taking a look at True Timber. He does seem to have the right running style. He comes from off the pace, and he comes off a 3rd place finish to Maximum Security and Spun to Run in the 2019 Cigar Mile. So he's got the class, he gets a good draw, and his regular jockey, Joe Bravo, is in the irons here for the Pegasus Cup. Again, your best chance, lay off the pace, save some ground on the inside, and try to close late. Could possibly pick up some of the pieces. Tax has been an interesting horse all of 2019. He makes his 2020 debut, and his Brisnet speed figure was back-to-back 100s the last 2 races of the year with a 102 in the Traverse Stakes. He was bet down a little bit that day, 8-1, after a big victory in the Jim Dandy, a Grade 2. So Tax now has to face Grade 1 older horses, but he does draw inside. His regular jockey is on him, and that last race, the Discovery Handicap, was a Grade 3, but he was beaten by a nice horse that day, Performer, who closed out the year with a string of victories, and he's probably going to be one of the better older horses coming into 2020. He's not in this race. He's going to rest up for a little bit, but we'll probably see him in the spring. So Tax has the pedigree. He's definitely one that can get the 9 furlongs. And if he can work out a good trip from behind, maybe get a fast pace, Tax is one of those horses that could find himself in the winner's circle. Diamond Oops is another speed horse, won most recently at 7 furlongs in the Mr. Prospector. Beat a couple of nice horses that day as Imperial Hint faded late, and Diamond Oops closed down, finished with a Brisnet speed figure of 103. 5 for 6 lifetime at Gulfstream Park. That bodes well, but he is not contested the 9 furlong distance. He's another one that comes off the pace in sprints, so he's a late running sprinter. Now he's got to go 9 furlongs facing other speed. He has his regular jockey, Julian Leperoux, and Diamond Oops, 20-1 in the morning line for the Pegasus Stakes. Seeking the Soul has back class, and he's done his best running at Churchill Downs. He won the Clark Handicap at Churchill. He also won the Stephen Foster. But make no mistake about it, his 2019 campaign was not very good overall. He finished 1 for 8, just the 1 victory in the Stephen Foster, and that was kind of a weaker field. Quip did not run well that day. Tom's D'Etat was coming off just 1 race going into that race. He finished off the year well, but going into that race was kind of unproven. And so Seeking the Soul, really no excuses out west in the Santa Anita, in the Awesome Again in the Breeders' Cup Classic, lost by 8 lengths and 15 lengths. Then came back and tried the Clark again and lost by another 8 lengths to Tom's D'Etat and Mr. Freeze. So Seeking the Soul with John Velasquez, that's a plus, but he is a 7-year-old, and it just seems like he's ran better races when he was 4- and 5-year-old, and he did finish 3rd last year, in actually 2nd in the Pegasus World Cup Invitational to City of Light, but he kind of picked up that pieces that day. He was never in danger of really winning that race. So Seeking the Soul, definitely a long shot in this year's Pegasus Stakes. Omaha Beach is your race favorite, trained by Richard Mandella, and Omaha Beach, 2-time Grade 1 winner. He's not a speed horse. He can press the pace. He can be on the lead. He showed the ability to go to the lead in the Rebel Stakes, but that was facing 3-year-olds. Then had a little bit of a slow start in the Arkansas Derby, made that move on the backstretch to get to the lead, and then just showed his class, outgaming Improbable in that Arkansas Derby victory. You know, the thing of it is, he ran the Santa Anita Sprint Championship Picked up a big Brisnet speed figure of 106 in that, but that was off a layoff, and that probably threw him off. He had to come back on only 3 weeks rest and run in the Breeders' Cup. He never really got wound up that day, losing to Spun to Run. He's definitely capable of better than that off the layoff, but a couple of question marks. The last 3 winners of this race came in all off impressive victories in the Breeders' Cup, including City of Light dominating the Breeders' Cup mile, and Arrogate, a Breeders' Cup Classic winner, Gun Runner, a Breeders' Cup Classic winner. Omaha Beach ran second in the Breeders' Cup, and then his most recent victory, a victory in the Malibu Stakes, but that was a small field, and horses like Roadster and Manny Wah would be 50 or 60 to 1 in a race like the Pegasus Stakes. So can he get a mile and an eighth against top company? And are you willing to take 6 to 5 or even money on Omaha Beach, and with the fact that it's his final career race and he's running without LASIK? So a few questions with Omaha Beach. He does have some answers. He's fast. He's versatile. Did have a little bit of a foot problem, but he came back with some jogs at Gulfstream Park this week. Omaha Beach, the most likely favorite for the Pegasus Stakes. Higher Power, a huge victory in the Pacific Classic. Won that day by 5, a 110 Brisnet speed figure. Then came back with a third place finish to Mongolian Groom in the Awesome Again, another grade 1, and then ran okay. Actually, Vino Rosso got the jump on him in that Breeders' Cup, and he chased McKenzie the first half of the race. McKenzie would be very competitive in this race, and Vino Rosso would probably be one of the top 2 favorites if he was in this race. So Higher Power, if he can get back to that Pacific Classic race, he can come off the pace. He can press the pace. I like the post position. He's right in the middle, and he seems to be working well. His best workout was probably on January the 11th when he worked out 6 furlongs in 112 and 3, then worked out in company and ran down his stablemate, his most recent work, on January 18th. Higher Power, definitely a contender at 6 to 1 on the morning line. War Story, he's a long shot, an 8-year-old, long in the tooth, and his lifetime record at 9 furlongs is 2 for 12. War Story gets Joel Rosario the truth, and we'll see if he can maybe come from behind and pick up some of the pieces. But War Story, definitely a long shot. His best speed figures, he just is not a grade 1 horse. He can run in grade 3s, he can run in grade 2s, but when he gets 9 furlongs against top-class company, War Story has given us 3-4 years of evidence that he just can't make the grade 1 class. Mr. Freeze, big victory, 3 races back in the ACAC. That was a grade 3. Then in the Clark Stakes, he ran kind of a sneaky race. He laid off the pace. They went 6 furlongs in 111 and 4. There was a speed ball out that day by the name of Mr. Buff, who's quality New York speed. Then he faded late, and Tom's Diatot came from off the pace. Mr. Freeze battled gamely. The question here is, can he get 9 furlongs in grade 1 company? I do like the fact that Luis Saez is on him, and he'll probably be closer to the pace, and his best races have been when he's been near the lead. Don't forget, he's got an 8-length victory in the West Virginia Derby as a 3-year-old. He's a 5-year-old. He's got some good running style, and he's a son of Two Honor and Serve out of Tabasco Cat. Every once in a while, he runs a big race. At 30 to 1, he's somebody you may want to use in those trifectas and superfectas. Spun to Run is going to be the second favorite. He's 7 to 2 on the morning line. Javier Castellano rides, and that'll be for the first time. My issues with Spun to Run, he definitely ran a monster race in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, but he had everything going for him that day. He worked up well going into that race. A few of the leading contenders did not show up that day, and Omaha Beach bounced a little bit out of the Sprint Championship. Then he came back and emptied the tank again in the Cigar Mile. He was all out against Maximum Security, and the race flow that day favored front runners. There was a front runner in the Remsen, and front runners did well in the Demoiselle Stakes, and then Spun to Run and Maximum Security ran 1-2 all the way around in the Cigar Mile. I think the race flow favored front runners that day, and Spun to Run emptied the tank. Now he's got to come back on only 6 weeks. He's got to go an extra 1/8 of a mile, and he's got to do it without LASIKs. Plus, he's got to face other speed. To me, the horse to fade in this race, to play out of the money, is Spun to Run, and that's how I'm going to play this race, with Spun to Run spinning his wheels here in the Pegasus Handicap. Meanwhile, Mucho Gusto, this is an interesting horse. A string of workouts. He's been off since September the 29th, and that was a hard luck race in the Oklahoma Derby. He was bet down that day, pressed the pace for 3 calls, and then was just kind of finished late. His best 2 races were in the Haskell and the Travers, but he's another one. He ran a bang-up race to Maximum Security in the Haskell, Then ran hard again in the Travers, going 1.25 miles. Now he cuts back to 1.125 miles. He's on the outside of Spun to Run. Irad Ortiz rides him for the first time. Smokin' Joe Talamo's been on him all the other races of his career. So Mucho Gusto, he does run well off a layoff. I like the fact that he's a smaller horse. For me, when I handicap, when horses go off Lasix, I like horses that are smaller and carry less weight, because if they're not retaining all of that water weight, Mucho Gusto at 9-2 in the morning line, he's definitely one of my top 3 contenders here in the Pegasus Stakes. Tenfold, another one who runs big races at times, but he's got some poor recent form. His last 5 races, he's lost by over 40 lengths, and he's on kind of a losing streak since winning the Pimlico Special, and that was a grade 3 race last May. So he needs to go back to that form. He has run some races where he's been on the lead. He does like a sloppy track, and definitely 9 furlongs is probably one of his better distances. He's 1 for 6 lifetime at 9 furlongs, and he's going to hit hard at 25-1. I just think overall Tenfold is not in the best form of his career, but he is one you have to respect and probably better than a few of the other horses. Meanwhile, rounding out the field on the outside is Bode Express. Bode Express gained notoriety in the Preakness Stakes for throwing his jockey, came back with a huge victory in an allowance race, a 105 Brisnet speed figure. He's another one with speed, so the 3 speeds all drew outside. Spun to Run in post 9, post 10 for Mucho Gusto, post 12 for Bode Express, and Omaha Beach in the middle of the class. Does he want to go out and try to establish position for Omaha Beach, or is he going to be content to lay 4th or 5th for that first half of the mile? Bode Express is probably going to dictate how this race is won and what some of the fractions are on what his jockey does out of the gate, especially for the first half mile. Horses that I'm tossing are War Story, and contenders for me are Higher Power, along with Tax and Mucho Gusto. I think Mr. Freeze is interesting at a price. Omaha Beach goes without Lasix, has got to face other speed. And for me, Spun to Run is the horse that I'm going to throw off my ticket. I think he's going to go 9 furlongs. I think he emptied the take the last 2 races and got favorable pace matchups in those races. Now he's got to face a new surface, and he's got to go longer, and he's got to face more speed, all without Lasix. Remember, hit subscribe. We'll lead you all the way through the Grade 1 races in 2020. Who do you like in the Pegasus Stakes? And we've got previews of the Smarty Jones and some Kentucky Derby contender previews all online. Subscribe, smash that like button. It's the Grade 1 2020 Pegasus Stakes.